Seeing Heidi Jung's art makes me happy. She's putting it into the world with kind of genuine passion, and she really loves what she's doing. And she told me once too, she did like this massive, I think it might have been a triptych, which is, 3 pieces that make one whole like landscape. And she had a commission where someone in Colorado said, we love that. And we want you to do the same thing because we look at this field over here. Can you make it personal to our view? And so she did. And so she can not only, kind of depict it in the way she wants because she's so married to, bringing that thing back to life, even though it's decaying, in her depiction. But she is really apt at kind of personalizing it if she needs to for commissions. And so, she can diversify her approach based on, creating for the sake of creating and putting that into, a collected kind of gallery exhibition. But she can also step in and make it personal to those clients who are lucky enough to be able to own a Heidi Jung painting.
Yeah, it's a striking moment too, because, she focuses on maybe the latter half of the plant's life, but she freezes it in time with that painting, so it sort of gets to live forever, but also it's not a brand new flower. It's not focusing on the youth and the brightness and the promise. In fact, it's kind of the opposite, which is kind of, for those of us who are past 40 or whatever, it almost feels more beautiful because it feels like you're kind of coming into your prime and all of these sorts of things. And I think that she's kind of capturing that in some of these photos, that moment of it being in its prime, but it's not perfect,
Right, it's not perfect. I think that's so well said, Matt. I think, and she wants you to notice that, like she said, like she says in this episode, the prime of the flower is always the subject, but to see it kind of past its prime, and approaching the state of decay or within the state of degrading. It's just a special space to focus on, and she brings us there, and it's something that we maybe don't necessarily notice all the time that deserves some attention. So,
yeah, I agree. Yeah, this was a fun episode.
Yeah.
So we talked yesterday, Heidi, a little bit, but tell me again how you and Jenn met each other initially.
We met each other at a snazzy cocktail party in Jackson Hole.
Oh, that's right.
That's as fancy as you get, friends.
I know. And we couldn't talk to anyone else, I think, the rest of the night.
Yeah.
We just started blabbing, and the rest is history.
Yeah, we found the other person to stand in the corner with.
That's right. That's right. And that really was it. And then we've reconnected a few times over the years, and it's been great.
Right.
That's cool.
I was really fortunate to be able to interview Heidi for Artist Magazine, and getting into her process and trying to understand how she kind of developed what she's doing with her medium, which is Sumi ink and charcoal primarily. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
Because if you're jumping into other stuff,
80%, I would say 80%.
Right. Yeah. And I think that when I think about Heidi's work, it is about her kind of embracing a sense of play in order to understand how she has to develop her art to make it original to her own voice. And this is involved, you're working on Mylar, right? So it's Sumi.
I'm working on Mylar.
Yeah.
That developed from being a poor, sad, no money artist. I wanted to still work with a paper medium, a water medium, but framing is so expensive. Putting things under glass is so expensive. And so I started playing around with Mylar to see if I could make a piece that would not have to be framed, that I could apply to panel. And so that's kind of where the journey started. And then it's such a serendipitous process that I can't foresee not doing it till the end of time. It's just got so many little twists and turns, and it's part control, part serendipity, and I love it. So that's where we're at.
Right. And your heavy focuses on the botanical world. And like when I say that out loud, I have this vision of little child Heidi running amongst the foothills of the Colorado Rockies, exploring the natural world, Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah. You had a lot of outdoor play growing up.
We did. My brother and I, we grew up in the mountains in Colorado, and we were our own best friends. There weren't a lot of other kids in the area, and so my parents could kind of just let us free, and we would just completely explore. And my dad especially really taught us to not be afraid of things. And so I have this great picture of me when I was like 4 years old with a giant snake wrapped around my arm, and just we just loved critters. We loved the outdoors. We loved getting close to things, and I think that sort of set the tone for the rest of my adult life. I'm kind of it's kind of funny to go on a walk because there's not much walking. There's a lot of looking, and I think that's where that all started.
Yeah, that really kind of innate power of observation, I think, is kind of what feeds you so well. Yeah. And two, when you look at Heidi's work, which you can see some of it behind her, I'm so pleased to be able to see some of your art.
Working on some new pieces.
Really nice. Yeah. And definitely HeidiJung.com is the place to be, if I'm correct.
Yeah. You are.
I always have to vet my input. Like, is that, I'm fact checking with Heidi right now as we speak.
Yes.
I understand that you just got back from the LA Art Show.
I did. I have a new gallery representing me in Denver, William Habu Gallery. And I was lucky enough to be one of the artists that they chose to take some of their work to their beautiful booth. And it was really wonderful. A little biased, but I thought it was the best looking booth in the whole joint. So we had a great time and lots of wonderful feedback and meeting new people. And it was really great.
Isn't it wonderful to be in a space like that where you're surrounded by other creatives and the energy is just like you feed off each other just from being in the same space with one another. Forget this virtual talk.
We all get together and touch antennas and swap stories.
That's fantastic.
Talk about all the highs and lows of it. It appears to be a glamorous world, but I assure you it has just as many pitfalls and scares and everything as any other career. I think a lot of people think that it's this super glamorous life that you get to do what you love, which is true, but it has just as many twists and turns as any other career.
Yes, we've absolutely addressed here. Like being a creative professional, you have to bring your inner sense of innocence in a way. You have to let your sense of play take charge for a lot of it, because that's how you create your living. At the same time, you have to be really practically minded about marketing. And for instance, you are very fortunate to be represented in different parts of the country. And so you have this really great insight into how your art is received in varying parts of the country, Denver and then Palo Alto and then New Orleans. Right?
It's yes. And you do. I mean, I think that's why galleries were created initially, was because artists aren't always the best advocates for themselves. You picture Van Gogh, he needed his brother to, kind of help him along. So when you can grasp both sides, it's a huge benefit. And I try to get out of my comfort zone as much as possible and embrace the business side of it without, letting it infringe on my creative process. But I think being able to play with both sides of the coin is, really important. And being able to return a phone call, all of those great things.
Right.
So, yeah.
You're talking about the Mylar medium. And I would like for, the audience who doesn't really know what that is, to just kind of give us a rundown. And also you kind of mentioned it surprises you. There's twists and turns. Like how does that play into using this?
Yeah. So Mylar is a clear polyester paper. So most architect's vellum, often people use it for architectural drawings to make layers over each other. So I use a frosted on two sides. And I use sandpaper first to kind of create a distressed surface so that the ink kind of sets into those scratches and creates a sort of an antique look. And when I was first playing with it, I was, trying to stretch all of my materials as far as I could. And I went to go and wash one of them off, because if you use water, because they're a plastic, you could kind of wash a lot of it off. And what ended up happening was these ghost images sort of appeared. You could wash it almost all away, but not completely. And it just was sort of this explosion of possibilities, because then I could create lots of different layers and be able to, almost like on a computer drawing, erase completely away. Whereas with paper, it's so fragile and you can only do that so much before it tears or becomes compromised. So it really opened up a huge world of possibilities. And by using Sumi ink, because it's water-based, I can wash a little bit of it away or all of it away. And so it just gives me a huge range of tonal effects that I can play with. And then I also use it with washes. So I have these drawings back here that are up, but I also paint flat and do washes and let things dry, and watching how the water evaporates. Like for the last 2 days, I've been working on this huge drawing over here, and I'll just let the pool of water completely evaporate over 2 days. And what it'll do is kind of make rings with the ink and dry in certain areas and not in others, and pool. And if you have the patience to let that process play out, the results are pretty great. So it's a lot of trying to walk that line of control and letting nature take its course, so to speak.
Right. And really, I think the sense of the vibe of, for me anyway, you walk in front of one of your pieces, and I feel like you're looking at a photographic negative. And truly, Heidi is bringing a background into this in photography, where she nurtured her skills in the darkroom. And the more you talk about your work, the more I see the stages, Heidi, that you are really mimicking a similar path, right? Like, you start out with this idea, and really in the darkroom too, you can be so spontaneous, but you have to plan in a way. You have to plan, but the spontaneity has to be there to assist you as well. And that is what's happening here. I mean, I just highly recommend.
I initially wasn't as skilled of a rendering genius as I maybe am trying to be now, but I wasn't I wasn't a technically good renderer or drawer. And so over time, I've really gravitated to that sort of trompe l'oeil effect of having these realistic bits while also having some very loose, watery, again, serendipitous parts that I feel like really complement each other if I can get it just right. So I love a lot of people think that the pieces are photographs or that they stem from photographs. The only photographic process is that I really do try and take my own photo references to draw from, but they're 100% hand painted, hand drawn, and then sort of manipulated with sandpaper and water and nubs and erasers and a constant push pull. So going back and forth and walking back and forth and seeing how things look close up. One of the most favorite things that I love about what I try and achieve is being able to get your nose right up to the piece and seeing as much close up as you do far away, and everything in between. So that's kind of what I'm trying to achieve is some artists, they would be like, don't get that close, and I want people to get close. I want people to see the scratches and the evolution of and hopefully kind of not understand how it happened. That's another, I want to have that mystery in there. And, have some obvious, mark making, but then also some parts like, how did that happen?
Right.
So.
And just to remind the audience, our tagline is the creative adult is the child who survived, And I feel like that means that you do have to maintain some mystery in your life. And it is also often about deciding to do so. Like, it doesn't really allow itself to exist unless you embrace it on your own. And I want to read a quote here from, I'm not going to tell you who it's from until I'm done reading it, but okay. I'm going to bounce this off your beautiful face. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source for all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. Albert Einstein.
Oh, lovely. That's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I do a little too much standing around in awe, but snap me out of it.
I can relate to that.
I know. Yeah. I try, I don't know if you even have to try, if it's put into your life as a young child. I think that you can't avoid it. I was extremely lucky to have gone to an alternative education school since I was young. It was a public school, but it was sort of considered a charter, I suppose, at the time, and went all the way through high school. And it was very heavily weighted towards experiential learning. And so when a kid kind of starts at that level of being encouraged to just run around and see what lights you up, it's really hard to turn that off, and you don't want to turn it off. So I still find mystery in everything. I mean, the internet has been, incredible way to see all these different parts of the world, animals, plants, things that would just not be at your fingertips before. You'd have to go to a library and look up specific books and hope that someone had ever photographed it or done renderings of, wood frogs. Wood frogs, they're frozen in the Arctic for 8 months out of the year. Like what? Octopuses have skin that can change color and texture, and halibut, they have an eye that started out here and they both went over here. It just goes on and on. So I waste quite a bit of time in mystery.
Right. No, the world.
I don't know if it's a waste. It's not a waste. No, but I go down rabbit holes very easily, especially when it comes to nature.
Yes. And I think it's a gift to still be able to see it, to remind oneself that there's so much wonder out there. Heidi, I can tell from your subject matter that you have done your fair share of crawling around in the underbrush. Your art
constantly. I do. My favorite thing to do when I have a few hours is just go to the Denver Botanic Gardens. I can't get enough of it. It's different every season. It's just kind of endless.
Right.
In our own little backyard. So that, and I travel a lot to try and I'm really into ocean life and scuba diving and snorkeling. And so whenever I have time and money, that's where I spend my time. I'm not a skier. I'm from Colorado. I can't touch the stuff. Don't touch the stuff. but I'll spend my money happily going to visit my fish friends whenever I can. So,
well, it sounds a lot more placid than throwing oneself down a hill at the highest speed possible.
Some people love it, but
I live in
their sense of play. It's not
right. I live in a ski town, and it's not for me. But this place is gorgeous.
Yeah,
what can I say? I think too that another thing I admire about your sense of kind of embracing everything about your subject is that you are focused a lot on the life cycle of the plant, but you tend to pay a lot more attention to the decay side.
Yeah.
And this isn't often like we have a tendency to ignore decay. It doesn't matter if it's an object or if it's like in the natural world or if it's ourselves. It's kind of the ugly part, right? It's the ugly part.
Yeah.
But you brought out some real stark beauty in the way you address this stage. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it came from an artistic point of view that plants and flowers have been painted so often throughout history, and they're always, for the most part, shown in their glory and in their prime. And so for me, it was just trying to create a contrast and show a different side of the process, because, fall and winter and when things start to curl and dry, that's some of my favorite times of year, is watching that full cycle go through. So giving that portion of the plant's life a little bit of a stage, I think is warranted. It's interesting. I certainly love it. And I like to try and go for things that are maybe a little bit unexpected. So, and also with color, that's why I've removed the color from my pieces, because I do feel like that has been done, and I would like to show them almost as personalities, almost as portraits, and remove the color and just have them be kind of their frozen shape in time. So that's kind of been my thought process. And I think it goes back to photography as well, is that when things are still, and I do look at them like a portrait. And that's why going on walks with me is a very slow process, because I stop and photograph these bits all along the way, because my eyes just sort of work like that. They almost are like a shutter. My dad and I were on a trip driving from Colorado to Texas, and there's this portion just outside of the western Texas border that's just full of yucca plants and yucca blooms and the skeletons of the yucca pods. And I made him pull over several times to chop some down and bring them home. But yeah, it was a slow trip.
Isn't that the best hike you can go on, though? Like when you're just lollygagging so hard that you notice like as much as you can. And that has so much to do with the insects that are busy, and what the wind is doing to the trees around you. And this some kind of sense of noticing and kind of being in the moment is very much about remaining in a childlike state and staying curious and about your world,
Yeah. And I feel for people that don't allow themselves that time, and I think that when we do, we remind ourselves, gosh, I really need to do this more often. And I think that it's an important, sort of meditative process to be able to take the time to look around and smell the roses. That's why that saying came about, is just we need to slow our lives down and put our noses, in a flower and notice our surroundings. I think it's a good replacement for meditation. It is meditation. So
yeah, absolutely. I think exposing oneself to the natural world really matters, especially now. And taking that time is it's been centering for us since time primordial. Just being out there is what fed us. And then now we're not out there, we're inside, and, we can't help it. We're all trying to make a living, and we're doing what we can,
Yeah.
And so, you're easily drained of the impetus to kind of like step out of your comfort zone, which would be to step away.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot, when you're a creative professional and you're successful, there's something to be said about how you spend your time when you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And that process of not doing anything is everything.
It's everything. And if you come from a Catholic family, which I did, there's a little guilt there.
That's right. What are you doing?
When you embrace it, when you embrace and give it the status in your life that it deserves, that it is really important, that recharging, I mean, sleep is the most healing part of our lives. If we don't sleep, we fall apart. And so I think it's akin to that, giving it kudos, spending time just in a meditative, noticing state, downloading what you've done for the day, taking the time to recharge, is so important. So important.
Absolutely. And then too, I think you and I have talked a little bit about this, like we're living in a culture of, we're supposed to be human beings and we're stuck in the mode of being human doings, right? And the culture says, if you're being creative, what's your end game? How are you going to monetize that thing you just crocheted?
Yeah.
So you're not even allowed to just be creative for the sake of creativity. And then I want to say something else about how Heidi has kind of described her own inspiration and her lack of control to create, which is, she has actually said something to the effect of, I do it because I have to for the sake of doing it. And as far as I'm concerned, I could just stick it in a drawer and keep going. But I have the privilege of showing it to others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's become a bigger part of my life, because when I initially started doing art, I went to school for fine art. I got my degree in it. And my initial plan was to become an art teacher. And that kind of got put by the wayside. And I ended up getting a job in interiors with interior designers and selling to interior designers. It was a way for me to be with creative people without being a starving artist. And it was hugely beneficial. And I actually recommend that to young artists, is that if you want to still be, eating and making a living, try and at least do it in a creative field, graphic design or music producing, or, working with creative people, even if you can't only make money off of the one single thing that you made. And I think that gives your work a certain amount of integrity anyway, because you're not relying on what other people think of it. You're right. Doing it from a genuine place, and you can put it aside. And then if people end up loving it more, you made it from a place of integrity. And so I used to say that, and I still feel that way. But now that I left the corporate world, I guess it was about 6 or 8 years ago now, and I make a living off of these things that I make, I still really try and walk that line of being able to know that I love it the most, and I could still put it in a drawer, but hopefully other people will like it too. So
nice. I love that.
Yeah.
And you had the opportunity. So one of your favorite places to be is at the Denver Botanical Garden. And anyone here listening who's never been to Denver or a botanical garden.
Yeah.
Denver's an amazing start. It is. It's just phenomenal. And you had a chance to show there. You had a show at the garden.
I did. I know. And it was so lovely. They invited me, which was just a huge compliment. At the time, they were doing a whole focus on edible plants and food was their entire theme, edible plants. And so they asked if I wanted to do a whole series around that. So I just did a deep dive into herbs and, all of the things that you can find at the gardens that we end up using to sustain ourselves. So I did a piece that was of beets and one on carrots. And then I did opal basil, which is one of this deep, dark purple opal. It's called opal basil, going to seed. So again, doing that full life cycle. And it was a huge compliment to be able to show there, especially because I just love that space so much. And for people that don't know, now every time I travel, I try and go to whatever local botanic gardens. And so I've been able to see a lot, and Denver is just so outstanding. You just wouldn't realize how great it is. They really have an incredible array of areas and different focus areas. Their Japanese garden is just stunning. And, not to mention the big greenhouse. So
sure,
it's my favorite.
Right. And I want to say too that Heidi, I think that show might have brought me closer to you because it was about food. And
oh, that's right, because of your love of
and I do love food so much. And when I interviewed Heidi for Artist Magazine, she actually sent me away with vegetables she had grown.
Here's some beets. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it gave me peppers and tomatoes. Oh, I could still, I think I might have used them for gazpacho. I'm not sure, but it was so good. Yeah. And so these are things that enable Heidi to do her job. Actually, the fact that she is looking out onto this lush, kind of cultivated space of greenery. Right now, as you can see behind Heidi, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, which you should,
all the friends,
the plants that are summering in your studio.
They're summering. I know they're snowbirding in my studio.
That's
right. I like so many things, and I kind of, it's a problem, Jen. It's an issue. A financial problem.
At least you can get some of it.
I know, but I have olive trees and mandarin and lemon trees and succulents that need to be brought in, and tropical plants that I put outside. So the studio gets a little bit cramped this time of year, and then they all go back out in the summertime. But gardening is my next favorite thing to do. If I'm not painting, I'm trying to grow the things that I eventually want to paint, or just viewing the life cycle of all of the different things. I love fennel and letting the fennel go to seed and actually using that seed. And, it goes on and on and on. So I have a vegetable garden, and then also just a botanical aesthetic garden. And I can't stop. It's a problem. I think I have a typical 6,000 square foot lot home in Denver. Right. And I think I've counted that I have about 40 trees now. A lot of them are in pots. So I do a lot of experimental bonsaiing and things like that. So it's all.
And you've got wisteria. You've got wisteria hanging up. I can't believe that.
My favorite.
Amazing.
And I can't stop photographing it, and I can't stop painting it. I might become the known wacky wisteria painter over time. It's
perfect.
Like wisteria 10, wisteria 11, wisteria 30.
And this was my third wisteria series.
Yeah. Okay, we get it. You like wisteria.
So going back to the Albert Einstein quote, I understand too that you actually, I remember that you had a quote painted in your studio, but it's from your upbringing. It's an influence from your father.
Yes. Yeah. It was Henry David Thoreau. And it was life is frittered away by detail, simplify. And I still try to live up to that in my life, in my work. I think that editing is the most important thing in an artist's life, being able to edit, because our creative brains are going so much, and we want to try everything, and we want to do everything. And if you have the ability to control that a little bit and focus and edit and not just go like this, but go like this, it can force our wacky brains to kind of funnel down into a focus. And I think it's a really important thing to just remove and edit and simplify.
Right. And as a writer, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that I don't know if I read this or someone told me, but it really stuck with me. And they pointed out to me that a writer is not a writer, but a rewriter.
And a rewriter and a rewriter. And
I was going to say, to the nth degree.
Right.
So, your job is to learn your style, your voice enough to understand, what do I have to always take away?
Yeah.
And in the taking away, you're adding in a way, because you are simplifying. So you're adding enough space for the words to breathe.
Yes.
Yes.
I know. I love that exercise of removing words to get to the absolute best essence of a saying or a sentence.
Right.
It's such a great exercise.
Yeah. And I've had so many great editors in my life, but ultimately, that's only like kind of a bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, if they don't hire you because you turn your work in and they have to finish it for you.
No, exactly.
Right.
And so I would imagine that relationship is so symbiotic.
It is. And I think that there's certain things that I write about that get edited less. Like, I think I write about artists and my work is edited less than some other assignments I might get, because it shows that I just like it the most.
Yeah. Well, and that is a testament to the article that you did on me, which is the best writing anyone has ever done on me. You completely encapsulated everything that I said. I can't tell you how many times I've had other examples where it was like, did I say that? Was that really what I said? And I don't think it was, but you completely captured everything that my entire essence of this process. So anyway, kudos to you.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed writing that, because I know you on a personal level, but also I want to say too that to any writers out there, like, there's a lot of right ways to do it, because you have to be able to be brave enough to put words on paper, but process is so personal. And when you complimented me for that piece, I want to say thank you for that. But I also want to say there's a lot of my writing that happens kind of unconsciously.
Right.
In a way.
It's the zone, right?
It is. Flow. That must be my flow, because there are many times over that I look at a finished piece, and no matter how many times I rewrote that thing, turned it in, read it again 12 times, because I'm crazy. Yeah. But then I'll see it in print and I'll be like,
I don't remember.
Did I write that?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think I go into a little bit of a fugue state. Like there's awareness there, but I'm so channeled into what I'm doing, that the good stuff comes when your attention is almost, it's subverted by your ego. Like,
yes, and I think that's the creative process, because you're completely in your own world, and I think that's why people, why when you have a hobby, or you're even restoring an old car, or in the dark room, you can lose hours and hours and hours, because it's a solitary meditative process that doesn't have to do with anyone else except for you at that moment. And I think that flow can become addictive, and it's restorative, and it's really, really important. And society sometimes doesn't put as much importance into it, but it's really important.
And I love that example, restoring an old car. I mean, what a beautiful example of like having to focus on detail in the most critical way.
Yeah.
Because in the end, you need to make something work, like a clock on a higher level. But I mean, it is just another example of what you could be doing with your time that is not assigned monetization. It's not assigned. The reward is the process. The reward is I'm doing this right now and it makes me feel good. Right.
Yeah. And back to the childhood sense of play is just playing with blocks. I think that's probably one of the first times that we really started to have that feeling in us where we would get lost in just doing some sort of play by ourselves. And I can't say enough how important I think it is, how important I feel like it is in my life.
Right.
And for people to try and embrace it, even if they have a corporate 9-to-5 job, if they can find a hobby or something that can get them into that zone and that flow. It's the exact same thing as meditating for an hour. It's the same. I'm not even sure what it is, but it's those same alpha waves in your brain that happen when you're meditating.
Yep. And let's ask Matt if he has anything like that in his life. Matt, are you whittling wood on your spare time?
No. Well, it's funny because my hobby is my job, and that's which I think
the ultimate goal.
Yeah, but I think I also need a hobby now, something completely, outside of that, because there's so many facets of filmmaking that I love. It's a dangerous place though, because it can become too much of a job. It can become too much of, just work as opposed to just joy. And so that's actually been the last, I'd say 3 months. It's been a kind of an interesting journey to reestablish my love for what I do, because it started as you were talking earlier, Heidi, about having a job in a creative field while also doing what you want to do creatively. Yeah. And so that way you're not reliant upon the creativity to pay the bills, at least initially. And I kind of did it the opposite way, which really worked for me, where I had a job that had nothing to do with creativity. It had everything to do with leadership and productivity and different aspects of my life while building my business. And so it worked out really well for me. And so now that I find myself in a purely creative field, whether it's, making commercials, or I have like a couple of YouTube channels and now podcasts, I have to do something for myself very frequently, whether it's just setting up my photography gear and just taking a cool like flat lay photo or something cool like that.
Yeah.
I have to do that every now and then to reestablish why I love what I do. And then that fuels, again, my sort of creative fire. When you're working for someone else's creative designs all the time, it becomes just a job. And so, and my clients don't deserve that. They need me at 100% creatively to sell their product, their business, whatever it is. And so, going back to your roots, because I mean, this is the thing. I was making movies with my brothers and my cousins since I was, like 7, 8 years old or whatever it was. Ridiculous movies. And we were doing it for the love of it, and all the way through high school. And so don't let it become a job. Keep it rooted in why you do it in the first place.
I was just having that same conversation with an artist yesterday, Matt, and she said to me, ask yourself this when you're struggling to identify, this is always what I've wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Ask yourself if you have to do it or if you get to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I have assignments too that, like I just said, some of the stuff I turn in, the copy's super clean because I was passionate about that subject.
Mm-hmm.
Other times I do need the help of my editor because what I put in the middle needs to go at the top. I was a little bit mushy on some part of it. You can tell where my passion, when I'm channeling my passion, what the parts that I like want to focus on, like a kid.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah. That's like what Matt was saying. It is so great, the opposite way of doing it too. And I've thought of this a lot of times when we're talking about the workforce and people not necessarily giving as much respect to just, working at McDonald's or being a janitor. But so many of those people just want to make a paycheck so that they can go and do the thing that they're passionate about. And so I get really passionate about that every job matters in order to create the life that you want. So exactly, Matt, that exact opposite way of doing it, just doing something that pays the bills in order to let you do what you really want to do. I have a friend that's a doctor, and he is incredible, and he's an amazing sought after physician, but his passion is restoring old firearms and cars. And the doctor stuff is like, but that's what really lights him up. And if you mention, an old 1911, watch him go, and so I think there's lots of ways to skin a cat, and but it's important to skin the cat.
But grab onto it, right?
Yeah.
Grab onto that thing that keeps your curiosity alive. And I always say never stop learning. And it's something that saved me over and over. You can, what did Dorothy Parker say? The only cure for boredom is curiosity, but there is no cure for curiosity.
Right.
It's there, and allow yourself to kind of give into it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, kind of makes you feel alive.
It does. Right? Yeah. It does. And and the absence of it is sad. We have to make the time to take care of ourselves and give ourselves that time. And we're so lucky to be able to do what we do, and that people appreciate it and pay us for our creativity.
Yeah.
I hope it inspires other people to try and tap into that, because I think societally it's an important thing to have. It's an important element. It doesn't get enough attention.
That's true. So Heidi, this has been such a great experience. I just love a chance to talk to you, even if there's a third party present. It's okay, Matt.
Blab and blab.
Yeah. I had a quick question though, because, curious actually about your use of light, in your work, because I think that you started as a photographer. We all kind of do, I think, in a way, because you see the world a certain way, capture the moment. And there's nothing really more important in photography and cinematography than light, whether it's moving picture or still. And so much of your work, because you don't really use color anymore, it almost looks like a negative, or it's backlit. Like, is that intentional? Is that how you see things? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think it is. And when I was when I first started in the darkroom in high school, and I learned about filters, about contrast filters, I would use the number 5. It was like the blacks and the whites were always what I was going for. I didn't like the muddy grays. And so that, I don't know exactly where it comes from, but I think that was what I was always attracted to in the darkroom. And so I do try and convey that. And I have a lot of high contrast feel in the pieces that I do. It just, to me, it adds detail and interest. And that's just sort of what I gravitate to. But as far as the process of it, the panels that I do are painted first bright white. And so when I put the Mylar, because it's translucent, that sort of gives it that sense that it's glowing from behind. And then you can see all of those ghost images where I think it is a different element. It feels like almost like a window that's being lit from behind. So yeah, that's definitely a focus area of trying to create contrast and interest and not let things get muddy or gray. That's the goal.
Right. And you're really using some very specific tools to scrape away what you're laying down. And that's a method called grattage, where she lays her medium down and then she'll start taking away, and she'll take away with eraser and other tools. And also she has her secrets, and I have my
secrets. I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
She will not even tell a writer who's a friend what she does with a hairdryer on that thing. Something's going on with the hairdryer. I don't. I saw it in her studio. She was like, I'm not going to tell you what I do with that hairdryer.
These are all trade practices.
Totally fair. All right. What do you think, Matt?
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, you guys. Good luck with this. It's
I'm
just
excited.
so fun to have these conversations, and best of luck on the rest of your journey.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
what I'll do with you, Heidi, is I got to send some emails out to our first 3 guests. Of course, you're among them, and kind of be like, what headshot do you want for social? A short bio. So you'll get an email.
You want a picture of me as a 4-year-old with a snake?
Hey.
Yeah.
It's a pretty great picture.
Perfect. And then you can hop off, and Matt and I are going to do a little post-production thing, trying to introduce you a little bit.
Okay. So fun, you
Good to
guys.
meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
All right,
Heidi.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Advanced Pretend is a podcast produced by 9 Stories Creative Podcast Studios, created by Jenn, executive produced and edited by Matt Jackson. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.